My name is Emily. I paid my rent on time, handed the cash to my own sister, and still got a notice threatening eviction. The landlord said he never saw $1. I didn't argue. I let him explain. If family ever handled your money and crossed a line, share your story in the comments. Dinner was halfway done when my phone started vibrating across the counter. The pasta water was boiling over, the smoke alarm chirped once, and my inbox refreshed with a subject line that didn't belong in a normal Tuesday night. Second notice, rent not received. The message sat there, polite and bold at the same time, explaining that payment hadn't been recorded and that further action would follow in 72 hours. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened it anyway. The email listed dates, amounts, and a deadline that didn't care who I was related to. At the bottom, in smaller font, it thanked me for my prompt attention. That part almost made me laugh. Almost. Laura answered on the third ring. "What's up?" she said, calm, like I'd called to ask about a recipe. "I just got a second notice from the management company," I said. "They're saying my rent wasn't paid." There was a pause, then a soft exhale. "I already took care of that," Laura said. "You probably forgot. It happens." "I handed you the cash last week," I said, "at your place." "Exactly," she said. "You gave it to me. I paid it." The stove timer went off behind me. I turned it off without looking. "They're saying they don't have it," I said. "They're slow to update," she replied. "They always are." I didn't argue. The call ended the way it began, with her sounding unbothered and me standing there holding a phone that suddenly felt heavier. The drawer under the counter stuck for a second before sliding open. The envelope I'd labeled rent was still there, folded and empty. No receipt tucked inside, no note, just paper creased where cash had been. An automatic reply from the management office hit my inbox a minute later. "Thank you for contacting us. Your inquiry has been received." Nothing else. Another vibration followed. Laura again, this time as a text. A single thumbs-up emoji sat in the middle of the screen, bright and cheerful, like it belonged to a different conversation. The next email loaded before I could lock the phone. This one was shorter. "Pay or quit notice pending." The words were clean and factual. No exclamation points, no anger, just a timeline counting down to consequences. I stood there, the smell of overcooked pasta filling the kitchen, reading the footer that thanked me again for my prompt attention. Whoever wrote these emails had a gift for courtesy. The system stayed polite while quietly explaining how easily someone could lose a home. Courtesy, apparently, didn't require accuracy. Neither did trust, or receipts, or family honesty. Apparently not tonight. Lesson noted. The counter clock read 7:12 p.m. 72 hours put me right at the end of the week. My phone was already in my hand when I pulled up the number for the management office. The next morning started with my phone ringing before I had finished my first coffee. The management office called during a team meeting, then again while I was on the phone with a client. Each time I stepped into the hallway, explained the situation, and heard the same measured response. "We don't have a record of payment yet." The tone never changed. Neither did the implication. By lunch, my supervisor asked if everything was okay. I said yes and silenced my phone. It rang anyway. Laura didn't wait for me to catch up. By the time I got to our parents' house that evening, she had already framed the story. Plates clinked. Someone poured iced tea. Conversation slowed when I walked in. "She's been stressed," Laura said, smiling like a mediator. "I paid it for her. She just doesn't remember." I set my bag down and took a seat. "That's not what the office says," I replied. Our aunt tilted her head. "You were late on that electric bill last year," she said. "Maybe it's just one of those mix-ups." Laura nodded. "That's what I'm saying." No one asked for dates or amounts. No one asked how cash changed hands. The room settled into a comfortable explanation where everything made sense as long as I was the unreliable part. My phone buzzed under the table. An email from the management company came through, short and formal. No record of payment at this time. Please allow additional time for processing. Laura leaned back. See? Processing. I didn't answer. The word hung there like a solution, even though it explained nothing. Later, I met Marcus at a coffee shop near my office. He listened without interrupting while I laid out the timeline. When I finished, he asked questions instead of opinions. How much was the rent? When did you give her the cash? Did she say how she paid it? She didn't, I said. She just said she took care of it. Marcus nodded once. Don't argue with anyone, he said. Collect facts. That was it. No reassurance, no outrage, just instructions. Back at my desk, I scrolled through old texts. Laura had talked around details every time. No mention of checks, no mention of online portals, just vague updates and confidence. The pattern felt obvious once I saw it, like noticing a missing step after tripping twice. Another message from Laura came in while I was still looking. Let me handle this, she wrote. I'll call the landlord. It read like an offer. It landed like a correction. Dinner the next night was quieter. People spoke about work and traffic and weekend plans. Every few minutes, someone glanced my way, then back to Laura. She filled the gaps with reassurance. We don't need to make it a big deal, she said. Families work things out. My mother nodded. Keeping the peace matters. The clock on the stove read 8:47. 72 hours kept shrinking, whether we were peaceful or not. My phone chimed again. This time the email wasn't automated. Appointment scheduled for tomorrow at 10 a.m. Please arrive on time. The timing was exact. The subject line was neutral. The relief was brief. I read it twice while Laura talked about making calls and smoothing things over. She spoke as if the problem existed because I had noticed it. The thread with Laura was longer than I remembered. Scrolling back meant passing months of ordinary messages, plans, reminders, half-finished jokes. The rent conversation sat in the middle of it, easy to miss because nothing about it looked dramatic at the time. One line stopped me. Can you do cash this month? Laura had written. It's easier. That wasn't how she usually handled things. Laura liked apps, liked transfers, liked being able to point to a screen and say, it was done. Cash was what she complained about other people using. I kept scrolling. A few messages later, another line stood out. This one, not meant for me. I'll just float the rent for a bit, she wrote. Pay it back next week. The name above it wasn't mine. The explanation she'd given on the phone, about the landlord being slow, shifted shape. It didn't disappear. It just moved from harmless to deliberate. Another message came in before I could close the app. Please don't turn this into a thing, Laura wrote. You know how Mom gets. That was followed by a second text. Everyone's already stressed. Don't make it worse. No mention of receipts, no mention of dates. Just consequences, framed as feelings. I replied once. I need written confirmation from the management office. The response was immediate. So you don't trust me now? Laura wrote. That question went unanswered. The call to the management office didn't take long. A receptionist transferred me to someone who sounded practiced and careful. Can you confirm in writing that no payment has been received? I asked. There was a pause while keys clicked. Yes, she said. I can send that. The email arrived a few minutes later. We appreciate your patience. At this time, there is no record of payment for your unit. The phrasing was calm enough to be mistaken for reassurance. It felt more like documentation. Laura called as soon as it hit my inbox. I don't know why you'd do this, she said. This could have stayed between us. I need proof, I said. They're asking for it. She exhaled loudly. You're making it sound like I took your money, she said. That's not what happened. What happened then? I asked. Silence stretched longer than it had before. We'll talk about it as a family, she said finally. That's fair. The word fair landed wrong. It wasn't a solution. It was a stage. By the next morning, the family meeting was scheduled. Laura sent the details to the group chat with a tone that suggested cooperation. "So we can clear this up," she wrote. An hour later, a second message followed. "I just don't want people thinking the wrong thing." The implication wasn't subtle. At work, the appointment reminder from the management office sat at the top of my calendar. 10 a.m. tomorrow. The family meeting was set for that evening. The order wasn't accidental. Another message from Laura came through while I was reviewing a report. "If you go to them first," she wrote, "it's going to look bad." I didn't respond. By dinner, the group chat was active with side conversations. My mother asked if everything was okay. An aunt offered to help mediate. No one asked what the confirmation email said. Laura filled the space with explanations. "She's under a lot of pressure," she wrote. "This is just bad timing." A pressure, apparently, made money vanish. The management office sent one more message before the end of the day. "Please bring any relevant documentation to your appointment." The sentence was polite. It didn't take sides. It also didn't care who Laura was to me. When Laura called again, the tone had shifted. "We don't need strangers involved," she said. "Family should handle family stuff." "They already are," I said. "The office just wants facts." She laughed once, sharp and brief. "You really think they're on your side?" she asked. The question stayed hanging after the call ended. The calendar alert chimed at 9 p.m., reminding me of the meeting time. The family gathering came first. The appointment followed 12 hours later. Both required the same thing, answers that could survive being spoken out loud. My phone rested on the table, screen lit with 2 events stacked one above the other, counting down at the same pace while messages kept coming in. The notice was taped to my door when I got home, centered and official, like it belonged there. "Pay or quit" sat at the top in bold, with my unit number typed correctly, my name spelled right. A neighbor slowed near the stairs, glanced at the paper, then kept walking. I took a photo with my phone, thumb shaking enough to blur the first shot. The second came out clear. The deadline was printed in black ink, 3 days from now. No room for confusion. My phone started buzzing before I unlocked the door. Laura had already been talking. Messages stacked in the family chat, short and confident. "She's making this bigger than it needs to be," Laura wrote. "I paid it." Someone replied with a thumbs up. Someone else said, "Mistakes happen." I didn't answer. I stood there reading, the paper still taped to the door behind me, feeling the shape of the problem change from paperwork to reputation. By the time I got inside, another email from management waited. It wasn't automated this time. It confirmed the notice had been posted and repeated the deadline. No apology, no explanation, just instructions. Laura called while I read it. "You didn't have to push it," she said. "Now everyone thinks I did something wrong." I said nothing. She filled the silence by reminding me how disappointed Mom sounded. At work, Marcus met me in the hallway during a break. He didn't ask how I was. He asked where the notice was posted and whether I'd photographed it. When I nodded, he said, "That's the pattern." He explained it simply. Laura stayed between me and every system that mattered. Money, messages, family opinions. Remove the middle, and the truth had to stand on its own. He couldn't fix it. He just named it. That night, the family meeting didn't last long. Laura spoke first, steady and hurt. She said I'd let things get out of hand. She said she'd paid in cash and shouldn't be treated like a suspect. My mother asked why I couldn't apologize so it could be smoothed over. An uncle suggested pride was the real issue. No one asked to see the notice. No one asked for proof. My phone kept lighting up with reminders and attachments. The notice, the confirmation email, the appointment time. Each document said the same thing without raising its voice. Laura texted again. "Say sorry and I'll fix it," she wrote. The offer came with a deadline that matched the notice. Fixing it meant stepping back. Not fixing it meant being alone. The old plan was gone. Trust had been the plan. Letting Laura handle it had been the plan. None of that survived paper taped to a door. I gathered what I had anyway, stacking emails and screenshots into a thin folder. It wasn't proof of theft. It was proof of absence. Proof that something hadn't happened when it should have. Morning came with traffic and paperwork. The office building sat a few blocks from the freeway, the address printed on every email I'd received. I parked, checked the time, and held the folder like it might slip away. Laura had sent one last message while I drove. "We can still stop this," she wrote. The words felt heavier than the folder. Inside the lobby, the sign listed policies and office hours. People waited in chairs, holding envelopes, staring at phones. The system didn't recognize family titles. It recognized names, dates, and signatures. I stepped up to the desk, gave my name, and watched the receptionist pull up my file. The folder opened in my hands, pages aligned and ready, while my phone buzzed again with a call I didn't answer. The hallway toward the offices stretched ahead, quiet but busy, and when my name was called, my grip tightened as I moved forward, the door handle cool against my palm as it began to turn. The notice copy stayed on top of the stack as I walked, its corners bent from being handled too many times. A neighbor's glance replayed in my head, then disappeared when the receptionist pointed me down the hall. Laura's name flashed again on the screen, then went dark. The meeting was starting whether she approved or not. Each step carried the same thought forward without saying it out loud. Facts didn't need permission. They only needed a place to land. The meeting ended the way it began, with the same sentence repeated in the same tone. We never received it. No raised voices, no accusations, just policy, dates, and a screen turned slightly so I could see the empty ledger. The manager slid the folder back across the desk and thanked me for coming in. That was it. No pause for reaction, no space for argument. The door opened. I stepped out. The car door shut harder than intended. The engine stayed off. The steering wheel felt unfamiliar under my hands, like it belonged to someone else. The words from the office replayed, flat and complete, and then stopped doing anything at all. Nothing followed them. No panic, no anger, just a blank stretch of time where the problem existed without commentary. A text from Laura came through. So? The screen went dark again. Sitting there, it became obvious what hadn't worked. Trust wasn't the mistake by itself. The mistake was assuming trust didn't need structure. Handing over cash because it felt simpler. Avoiding receipts because asking for one sounded cold. Letting discomfort decide logistics. That pattern hadn't started with rent. It had just finally produced a consequence large enough to notice. Another message arrived. This one from my mother. Did you apologize? The question assumed the solution. It assumed the story stayed the same if the tone softened. Marcus called a few minutes later. He didn't ask what happened. He asked who I'd spoken to. The property manager, I said. What's her name, he asked. I told him. That's the one, he said. She's the only person who can officially say anything matters. He explained the policy I'd skimmed past in the lease. One point of contact, one accepted method of payment. No exceptions, even if someone meant well, especially not then. Let the system speak, he said. Stop trying to translate for everyone. The idea settled without resistance. It didn't feel bold. It felt final. Another text from Laura came in. This is getting out of control. That phrasing landed cleanly. Control had been the shared assumption. Control was what changed hands when the cash did. The plan took shape without urgency. No speeches, no confrontations. Just logistics placed where they belonged. The manager already had the record. The family already had opinions. Putting them in the same room removed the need to negotiate. The cost was obvious. Doing that would end the conversation with Laura as it had existed. It would irritate people who preferred explanations over facts. It would look like escalation. The alternative had already failed. I unlocked the phone and opened the family group chat. Messages filled the screen, concerned and corrective, offering ways to smooth things over. Fingers hovered, then typed. Can we have the property manager explain the payment record directly? The text stayed neutral. No blame, no defense. Just a request that shifted the weight. A response bubble appeared, then disappeared. then another. Laura typed, "That's unnecessary." The first hint didn't come from Laura. It came from a cousin who texted late after most of the group chat had gone silent. "Hey," she wrote, "is everything okay with Laura right now?" That was it. No accusation, no detail, just concern pointed in the wrong direction. A few minutes later, another message followed. She asked if she could borrow some money, said it was urgent. The shape of the situation shifted again. Not wider, deeper. Laura called before I could reply. "You really went there," she said, "with the manager." The tone wasn't angry. It was controlled, like she'd already rehearsed the next part. "This didn't need to leave the family," she continued. "Now people are asking questions." "About what?" I asked. "About why you'd do this," she said. "About why you'd embarrass me." That word stuck. Embarrassment implied exposure. Exposure implied something to hide. By the end of the day, the story had spread, adjusted along the way. Laura had called our parents, then our aunt, then anyone likely to listen. The version stayed consistent. I'd overreacted. I'd involved strangers. I'd turned a simple delay into a conflict. "She's always been dramatic under stress," Laura said, according to my mother. "She asked me to help, and now she's acting like I betrayed her." The betrayal moved locations with each retelling. Another cousin called later that night. She didn't mention rent. She mentioned a credit card Laura had maxed out months ago. A short-term loan that hadn't been short. A favor that had turned quiet and unresolved. The pattern became visible once it had a name. Laura liked cash because it didn't leave trails. She liked being the intermediary because it gave her leverage. Handling paperwork meant controlling timelines. Fixing things meant delaying consequences. None of it looked criminal on its own. Together, it explained too much. When Laura texted again, the confidence had sharpened. "If you bring the manager," she wrote, "I'll explain everything you've asked me to cover for over the years." There it was, the counterweight. Not evidence, memory, reputation. The things people believed because they'd heard them first. The problem with facts was that they didn't answer to tone. A call with Marcus later that evening stayed short. "Your proof only shows the rent wasn't paid," he said. "It doesn't show who touched the money." "I know," I said. "That means she'll sound cleaner than you," he replied. "For a while." That was the part that landed hardest. Winning wasn't guaranteed. Clarity didn't promise kindness. The meeting could end with everyone uncomfortable and no one satisfied. Laura sent another message while the phone was still warm from the call. "I'll come," she wrote, "to the meeting." The confidence was unmistakable. "You sure?" I typed. "Absolutely," she replied. "I have nothing to hide." The words felt borrowed. By morning, the family chat buzzed again. Logistics replaced arguments. Times, places, who would attend. Laura volunteered details quickly, like someone eager to be seen cooperating. "She's handling it," my mother texted privately. "Please don't push." Push meant insist the facts be spoken by someone who wasn't related to us. Laura called once more before bed. "This ends tomorrow," she said, "one way or another." The promise worked both ways. The appointment confirmation sat unread at the top of my inbox, already memorized. The manager's name stayed the same. The policy hadn't changed overnight. Neither had the record. Laura's confidence wasn't proof of innocence. It was proof she believed the room would still belong to her. The phone lit up again with her name. It rang twice, then stopped. A text followed. "See you tomorrow." The conference room felt borrowed, like it belonged to paperwork more than people. Laura arrived first, confident, greeting everyone as if hosting. My parents sat close together. An aunt and uncle filled the remaining chairs. The property manager set her folder on the table and asked for my name to confirm the unit. No one spoke while she did. The meeting started without ceremony. Phones stayed down, coffee cups untouched, waiting for someone else to lead the conversation forward now. I had planned to talk as little as possible. The request was simple and rehearsed. When the manager looked at me, I nodded and said only what mattered. Can you explain how rent payments are accepted and whether any payment was recorded under Laura's name?" The room stayed still. Laura shifted in her chair, smiling, already prepared to answer. Everyone waited for the manager to speak, as if the rules might bend. They did not. She opened the folder and began, voice even and practiced, with no hesitation at all. Laura interrupted before the explanation finished. "I paid cash. I handed it directly to the office." She spoke fast, confident, blaming timing, blaming systems, blaming delays. Heads nodded. The explanation sounded familiar because it had been repeated all week. It sounded reasonable until it met policy. The manager didn't raise her voice or argue. She flipped a page and answered the interruption instead of me. "We do not accept cash. There are no exceptions. No payment has been received for this unit." The statements landed one by one, clean and complete, removing the story Laura had been building. No one interrupted her this time. Policy replaced opinion at the table. It changed the temperature immediately. Laura stopped smiling. Right then. The room reacted without words. My parents looked down. Someone cleared their throat. Laura tried again, slower, softer, saying, "Mistakes happen." The manager repeated the policy, exactly the same. Nothing new was added, nothing needed to be. The silence stretched long enough to feel deliberate. Laura's earlier certainty drained as the explanation stayed firm. The manager closed her folder and summarized the account status in neutral language. "The balance is outstanding. The notice stands." No apology followed, no blame was assigned. The clarity carried weight, heavier than any argument. Laura's explanation had nowhere left to land. Her earlier confidence read differently now. It sounded rehearsed without support. Even family loyalty paused. The rules stayed unmoved. No debate followed. At all. The manager stood, signaling the end. "Thank you for your patience," she said, professional to the last word. Chairs shifted, papers stayed put. Laura remained seated. No one followed the manager out immediately. The sentence lingered longer than intended. It had been used all week in emails that threatened eviction. Hearing it spoken aloud made it final. The door closed behind her, leaving the rest of us with what remained. Laura stared at the table, hands flat, as if waiting for another chance. My mother glanced between us, uncertain. No one rushed to speak. The absence of argument felt louder than shouting. Laura's version had collapsed on contact. It wasn't dramatic, it was complete. The manager had left facts behind. They did not move. Neither did anyone else. Yet. Still. Laura finally looked up. The confidence from earlier was gone. The room waited, but no explanation came. The truth didn't need a follow-up. It had already been spoken by someone with no reason to protect anyone. That was the moment the balance shifted, quietly and completely. The story Laura told could not survive documentation. Family loyalty stalled when process entered the room. No one defended her now. The silence did more than argument ever could. Laura stayed still, eyes fixed downward. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I didn't check it. The meeting had ended without resolution for her. It ended with confirmation. Nothing else mattered. The facts had landed. They stayed where they placed. Unmoved, final, without appeal or negotiation. The follow-up didn't take long. Laura wired the money the same afternoon, fast enough to feel reactive rather than generous. The management office confirmed receipt within the hour. No commentary, no tone, just confirmation that the balance had been brought current and the notice withdrawn. Laura didn't call. She sent a short text that said the transfer was done and nothing else. Family conversations changed shape after that. Requests stopped. No one asked Laura to hold money, pass checks along, or take care of it anymore. When bills came up, people spoke carefully, naming amounts and methods like they were reading instructions out loud. Laura stayed present, but separate, listening more than speaking. No apologies were staged. No hugs appeared. Distance settled in and stayed. An email arrived from the management office the next morning. Account brought current. Thank you for your patience. I opened it, read it once, and saved it to a folder labeled Resolved. The name felt adequate. Not celebratory, not bitter, just accurate. The days after felt quieter, not in sound, but in expectation. No one waited for me to smooth things over. No one suggested a conversation to clear the air. Family dinners continued with the same dishes and the same chairs, but the roles had shifted. Money topics stayed factual or didn't come up at all. Laura avoided being in charge of anything that required follow-through. When she did speak, it was measured, almost cautious, like someone aware that attention could turn into scrutiny. The change wasn't dramatic, it was procedural. Boundaries showed up in calendars, payment apps, and group texts that now included screenshots and confirmations. Trust didn't disappear, but it was no longer assumed. It had requirements. The new lease signing happened a week later. The office was smaller and farther from work, which meant less convenience and more control. Payment details were confirmed twice. Names matched, dates aligned. The clerk slid the papers across the counter and waited while signatures were added in blue ink. Keys clinked when they were handed over. The transaction ended without conversation. Laura never mentioned the meeting again. When she spoke, it was about neutral things, schedules, weather, someone else's plans. The space between us did the work words used to do. Family gatherings continued with adjusted seating and shorter visits. The change wasn't announced. It was enforced by habit. The old apartment needed to be cleared before the end of the month. Boxes moved out in stages. A neighbor nodded once while passing in the hallway. The notice was gone from the door, but the tape residue remained, faint and stubborn. The management office asked for the keys on the last evening. The counter was empty when I arrived. A clerk looked up and recognized the unit number without checking the screen. "All set?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She held out her hand. The old keys landed in her palm. A receipt printed. No speech followed. The system accepted the return and moved on. Outside, the parking lot lights flickered on. The new keys sat in my pocket, heavier than the old ones, unfamiliar, but mine. The phone buzzed with a final notification from the management office, closing the account officially. I didn't open it. The door to the building pulled shut behind me, sealing the hallway away, and I stepped toward the car while the lock clicked, the sound clean and final as my hand reached for the handle.